Hello everyone, this is Wrath, and today we're going to be looking how to beat lines in the sand, specifically the Optimist route. So the big thing for this is going to be the global node, which is Masochism. And so Masochism is going to basically cause you to have your opponents regenerate their health if you cause a debuff on them. So there are a lot of different ways to handle this type of global node. One of them is to use champions that don't give any debuffs to your opponent, and then to completely avoid causing parrying to give them stun. And that will basically allow you to avoid this global node entirely. Now, of course, a lot of people don't have champions that cause 0 debuffs. Champions that would be like that would be Star-Lord and the such. The other way around this is to use Despair. And so Despair is a mastery that basically is going to decrease regeneration capabilities depending on how many debuffs you have on them. And so this one's going to be basically found on the offensive line. And as Despair, you can make it 3 out of 3. And this will give you 15% reduction in regeneration per debuff on them. And so what I'm going to do here is what I'm showing you is using champions that put on a ton of debuffs. Instead, it's going to be Dr. Voodoo with Poison. That's going to be bleeders like Black Panther and X-23. What you see here is that you can basically completely ignore the node. And what you're going to actually do is you're going to use your parrying to use the stun to remove the ability for it to block a debuff being added, and then you're going to just know that that stun is not going to stick. Then afterwards, you're going to apply your debuffs to them, and those debuffs are going to decrease the regeneration that they receive, as well as do damage over time. So what you're seeing here is I'm basically completely ignoring Yellowjacket's regeneration off of my stunning him from the parry, but he's still receiving a lot of damage because my poison counters are reducing the amount of regeneration he's getting from that, as well as causing damage over time. Now for Yellowjacket, the big thing is that you're going to want to do his second super. So push him to his second super by doing damage over time and doing your supers to get him there. Then you're going to dash backwards during his initial activation, and then dash again to completely avoid the second one. The first one is very hard to dodge correctly, so I would recommend, as it's not unblockable on this node, just taking it on your shield. And that's basically it for Yellowjacket. Baiting the second super, if he activates his first, just take it on your shield. Stun him, which will basically drop the stun to have him regenerate, but then cause damage over time with either bleeds or poisons. So you can use Archangel, you can use bleeders, but basically ignore the node and then just lower that regeneration by having damage over time with Despair as the mastery, so that way you can reduce their regeneration over time. Now in this path that we're taking, which is the left path, which is Optimist, is basically below 25% they're going to cause health steal and have more buffs on them, but again you can kind of ignore this as long as you're not allowing them to hit you. So with Deadpool here again, his big thing is going to be causing more regeneration. What you're seeing here is I'm going to use Black Panther, and I'm basically just going to do damage over time to him and reduce that regeneration by having those bleed markers on him. So with this strategy of Despair, you're going to be basically ignoring the node, and then just make sure that you know that if there's not that countdown timer on, it's triggered to cause the regeneration on the next debuff, which means that if you stun them with parry, you will drop the stun, which means do not attack immediately afterwards. You're going to have to make sure that you're blocking continuously until the end of their combo. And so you see that upper right, that gray countdown timer, that indicates that you've already done the Masochism, and so now, right now, because that timer's there, you can't do it again. But if it wasn't there, that indicates the next debuff is going to trigger. So with Deadpool, what you saw there, basically you're going to bait his first and second super. His first super is that groin punch, so you can just dodge backwards and get out of it. The second one's the sword slash, which you can dodge out of again. So for both of them, you're just going to basically dodge them. Now, the other strategy that you can do is you also can use, again, one that doesn't have any types of buffs on them or debuffs towards the opponent, which would be like Star-Lord. So basically, Star-Lord will never cause a debuff unless you use your second super. That would be another option. But again, I chose Voodoo for Colossus as he's not poison resistant. And so again, you're just going to basically hit him like normal. Then you're going to make sure that you use your stun, your parry, so that way you can apply your damage over time buffs. And that way you can get them in without having to have them drop because of the Masochism. For Colossus, you're going to bait either his first or second super. Either one is completely dodgeable. You just saw the second super, which is basically spins around and does an attack, so just make sure you dodge back until the end of that attack. For all of these supers, watch the video again closely to make sure that you are actually able to count the end of the combo, because otherwise you might dash in a little too early and get hit. So this time, I'm basically just right now with Dr. Voodoo building up those counters, the little skulls in the upper right. There's 6 of them currently. That's going to basically allow me to put more poisons on him when I get around to it. If you have Brother Daniel's on you, the green little broomstick, that allows you to have more ability accuracy, so you're going to be putting more of those counters on him to convert later. The third super with Voodoo basically is going to cause him to drain power over time, which is useful to make sure he doesn't get to his third super, and then it'll switch over to power gain for you. So again, you notice that I am causing a lot of regeneration on him, but right now I just stacked a little bit of poison on him. I'm going to do more the next time around. So here I'm going to drop another first super on him soon, which will again ideally give him more poison counters, and additionally reduces the regeneration that you're going to see overall. So with Colossus, just because he has so much armor, he is going to take more time overall. But just know, again, you're basically just doing a normal fight, and you're completely ignoring the regeneration, because overall, it's not going to really bring back that much, especially if you're leaving damage over time on them. So far, because of my Mystic Dispersion, I keep going past the burst super, so that's why this is getting a little more difficult than getting that poison counters on him. But again, I would recommend really trying to get a lot of poison counters on them, and then if you really want to get them on, make sure that you stun, otherwise that's going to reduce the amount, because you're going to have that debuff not being placed on him. Alright, so we're getting to the end here. Right now I'm just doing damage over time in terms of power drain, but I would recommend if you were doing this freshly, I would recommend using your first super continuously. I didn't do it here, but use your first super to get a little bit more damage over time with those poison counters. What you'll notice though is that even though I wasn't doing poison with damage over time, the regeneration still isn't that much, so I really would recommend, especially for the Optimist pathway, to kind of just ignore it and don't even pretend that it's there. So now with Punisher, Punisher has a lot of ranged attacks, which can do a lot of chip damage over time. Just make sure that you're taking that into account. That's why I choose Magic here, because Magic is going to allow me to reduce his overall power. And so the interesting thing about Magic here is that the second super, which causes Power Lock, actually activates Power Lock twice. So even if you don't have the reduction in terms of the debuff going away to regenerate on right now, you can still actually use your second super and cause the power lock to stick, even though you actually drop the first power lock. And so you'll see that here soon. But what I would recommend for Punisher is just power locking him out. That way he can't use his chip damage in terms of his long range attacks. And if you're doing this strategy, then basically you don't have to worry about dodging any supers. You can basically just, if you have Magic here, stun him, get the combos in, use your second super every single time, and then that second super is going to power lock him. That's what I would recommend in terms of Punisher. You can just basically do the same combo over and over again. Stick him into a wall, dash backwards, he'll dash after you, you can catch him with that dash forward, and then basically just do that over and over again, and then you just use your second super. Now, if you weren't using Magic for this, it'd be the exact same strategies before. If you know the timings for Punisher's first and second super, then you can dodge them, but they're very difficult. So if you don't have Magic, I would recommend just taking them on the shield or using a different power controller. So for instance, you could use Vision. But if you don't have a power controller, just take them on your shield. You're going to take chip damage, but it's okay. Just make sure that you're getting the damage in. You could use bleeders or poison controllers or someone like Star-Lord for a lot of damage over time without having the debuffs being applied to the champion and having that Masochism trigger and regenerate. That's basically it for Punisher. Just remember again that at the end, he can endure, which means he's going to be sticking around for a little bit longer until that endure runs out. So just make sure that you are continuing to attack even though you think that he's dead. So right now, he's still alive. Just make sure that you're continuously attacking him until he's dead. Overall, though, this is not a particularly difficult node, but do expect some chip damage if you're not having a power controller. Okay, so moving on to the next one, I would definitely recommend that you don't do what I do against this Iron Patriot. So Iron Patriot's super has a slightly different timing in terms of the length of the beam attack. So just make sure that when you're trying to dodge it, you dodge it correctly. I do not dodge it correctly in this video, so don't do what I do. On top of that, just remember that when he gets below a certain percent health, he activates power gain. So make sure that you're either baiting his super at that point, or you have a power controller, or you're close to killing him. I do not do that in this video, so just make sure that you don't follow along with what I do completely here. But again, X23 is a great champion for this, even though I waste her here. She has a lot of bleed potential. She stacks the bleeds very rapidly. Additionally, if you're going to do this route, you should have deep wounds to keep those bleeds on there longer. And then you also should have assassination so that when you bring them down further, you can kill them a lot more rapidly when they're at the lower health level. So right there you saw that beam attack is just a little bit longer, which means you have the dexterity a little bit later upon activation. If you're not comfortable with dodging any of the supers in this video, just hold them on your shield because they're not unblockable for the most part, and therefore you're not going to take a lot of damage. It's better off to not take the damage and then just not to dodge. So you saw here Iron Patriot had his power gain, which gave him his third super, and then you're stunned afterwards. So even if you are doing this, just make sure that you're not taking the damage. So unlike what I just did there, just make sure that if he uses his first super, you're either going to take on the shield or make sure you dexterity later, so that way the longer beam attack can be fully dexterity. And additionally, when he drops below 10% health, he is going to get that regeneration, but more importantly, that power gain is going to give him the ability to get to his third super unless you've adequately baited his supers earlier, or you're using like a third special or something to push him to death before he gets that third super. So again, it's not too difficult, just make sure you take those 2 points into account. Alright, so we're going to take this teleporter over. Overall, there's not too many really difficult nodes on this path other than just that global node. So now you're going to get into Iron Man, but again, he has regeneration, but if you're doing the Despair route or Heal Block route, then that means that you can really avoid it overall by just reducing that regeneration with overall debuffs. The other one that I didn't mention beforehand would be using someone that has a long-term healing block, which would be someone like Yellowjacket. So here I chose Black Panther as he stacks a lot of bleeds, and again I have deep wounds so they stick around longer. Big thing for Iron Man, bait his first or second super. He likes to fire off his supers when you're further away, what it appears in terms of the AI. So dash backwards first, then normally he activates it, which you just saw right there. His beam is very short, so you can really dexterity kind of any time, as long as you don't get hit by it. It's pretty easy to dodge. Second one, he jumps up and then does a large beam attack, but both of them are very dodgeable. What you're going to do is, again, just make sure that if you parry and he has the Masochism up still, meaning there's no gray countdown timer, then make sure that you're avoiding attacking right away because he will hit you as the stun will go away. But other than that, you're just going to continuously attack him just like normal, using parrying, getting your combos in that way, waiting for the end of his combo, dodging a heavy attack getting in, or dodging a first or second super. I like dodging the first or second super, so again, use your supers to push him to the first or second super, so that way you can dodge backwards and get behind it. So again, dodge back. Make sure you don't try to get hit, especially when he's below 25, otherwise he will get health gain, because he has health steal below that because of Optimist. He activates his regeneration abilities around 15%, which means that you're really going to want to have a lot of bleed stacked on him to really reduce his regeneration. So what you just saw there, having 6 bleeds on him almost completely reduced his regeneration to nothing, and so you don't even have to worry about it in terms of heal block. So this is the power of a bleed synergy with Despair and Deep Wounds. You can really get those stacks on them. And if you have this, I would really recommend Black Panthers or X-23. You also can use Poisoners like Dr. Voodoo or Archangel, anything that causes large stacks of bleeds. For a different character that would not work as well would be Killmonger, as his bleed only stack up to a 1, so you're not going to get those large stacks reduced generation like by a lot. So this is Yellowjacket. It was an ambush. Big thing with Yellowjacket, again, as you saw earlier, is you're going to want to use a power controller to try to reduce the amount of chip damage you have, which is why I'm using Voodoo here. If he uses his first super, just make sure that you don't dodge it unless you're really confident in it, because if you get hit by that, you're going to cause either damage in terms of the power sting, or you're going to be stunned and then take damage. So what I recommend if you have Voodoo is use your third super, put over that power degeneration over time, kind of reduce his power in terms of power leak, and then on top of that you're going to be using your second super to cause more power burn or power drain. Again, stack a lot of those counters on them to turn to poison, and you can definitely dodge the second super. So push to the second super if you can, because that way you can dodge his initial attacks and then dodge that beam as a shorter beam. So what you just saw there is use a second super because I want to power control him. The alternative to that is be using the first super over and over again, which you just saw there. Gives him 3 poison counters, so that way when he gets the regeneration in the future, it's going to be significantly less because of those 3 counters that are on him. So again, overall, the strategy for this node is no different than a normal Yellowjacket, because you're just kind of ignoring the fact that he's regenerating off the debuffs, because you put enough debuffs on him where it doesn't matter, and you're dealing enough damage where it doesn't matter. But just remember, you do not want him to get through his third super, and you do not want to try to dexterity his first super unless you're very confident in blocking and dodging out of it. It's much better just to take on your shield because the chip damage isn't that severe, even at the level that he's at in this fight. So now moving on. So again, just make sure that you're just doing your normal strategies and just kind of making sure that you remember that if you do parry someone, the stun will drop if Masochism is still up, meaning there's no gray countdown timer. Alright, so now we're going into Deadpool X-Force. The big thing to remember here is that when he drops below a certain percent health, depending on what level he is, he will start gaining power. So very similar to Iron Patriot, which means you're going to really want to make sure that you're baiting his supers when he's getting below 40%, near 30 to 25%, because otherwise he's going to go straight to his third super. So again, I'm using a bleeder, Black Panther. You're just going to deal a lot of damage in terms of the bleed counters. It's better for him to be unlocked, even though I'm using someone that's not unlocked here. Same thing as the original Deadpool. First super is the groin punch. Second super is the sword slash. You can dexterity out of both of them. Just bait it out. Bait strategies again. Try to attack his shield and dash backwards. Kind of tricks the AI into attacking. Or let him charge you, then dash backwards. That normally activates it as well. Or they like to activate it against the wall if you've pushed him that far back. So right there you saw that he activated his power gain around 26%. It basically gets him 2 bars of super energy. So if you've already baited him before that and he has 0 energy, then you should be fine. You don't have to worry about it. But just make sure you're not hitting him during that power gain. Alternatively, just make sure that you're baiting it during it so that way he doesn't end up getting his third super while you're attacking it. So there's nothing really special with the Deadpool X-Force. Just make sure that you're at the end of his health bar, that you're not pushing him too hard in terms of his super energy. Otherwise, he will get his third super. He'll cause you to bleed, and he will do a massive amount of damage overall. Alright, next is going to be War Machine. Again, remember he has Empty the Clip, which is basically give him a lot of attack and a lot of defense when you drop below 20%. Other than that, the big things to note are that his first super is extremely hard to dodge, so I would again take on the shield. It's where it's basically a bunch of machine gun blasts. That's why I would recommend pushing him to his second super. His second super is going to be basically where he shoots a rocket at you, dash backwards to give you some distance, and then you're going to dash backwards again when the rocket actually comes near you. Strategy overall, again, is the exact same. Parry, get your combos in, get combos in when he dashes forwards if you can. Push the second super and get your combos in afterwards. But again, make sure that if you do that stun and Masochism is still up, then you will drop that stun, so you have to basically back up and reset again. So right there you just saw how to dodge that super. He shoots the rocket blast, and make sure you dodge back afterwards. Other than doing the parry strategy, if the parry drops, as soon as he does the parry and he continues to attack you because you dropped the stun, just attack him at the end of his combo or after you use the heavy attack by dashing back and then dashing back in. Basically, again, same strategy as before. The bleed strategy with these nodes is extremely good just because of the amount of bleeds you can get on them. So again, you saw there, I would not recommend trying dexterity out of the first super. It is extremely difficult and it's going to get you in trouble probably. And if you do get hit by that first super, then it's going to cause bleeds, there's going to be massive amounts of damage, and it's just not worth it. So again, you're seeing here, if you're using Black Panther, use those supers to get him higher stacks of bleed on him to reduce that regeneration. Try to time your regeneration in terms of getting regeneration when you stun him, when you still have bleeds on him. And then when you see that gray clock in the top counting down, your stuns will stick, and you can use the parry strategy for those. Overall, it's going to be a long, drawn-out fight, especially against War Machine. But again, try to push him to the second super by using your own super to get him up there, and then dodge that because it's going to be the rocket blast, and that one's pretty easy to dodge. So again, here you'll see that I'm going to try to end the combo and then get in there and use my super to push him to that second super so that way I can dodge backwards for it. Again, when he's in this Empty the Clip, make sure you're not getting hit as much because the damage through those Fury marks is going to be really, really high. So this is going to be dangerous in terms of being hit. So you want to make sure that you're really getting in there, getting the combos in, pushing into a second super, and trying to really make sure you do not get hit during that period of time. So overall, not too difficult, as long as you remember, don't dexterity the first super. That's going to be really punishing. And then try to, again, bait that second super. Alright, so now we're moving into the Hulk here. The Hulk's big thing is that his first super, you can definitely dodge it if you so desire. However, if you mess it up, it's going to cost a lot in terms of health. So if you're not comfortable dodging it, just take it on the shield. If you are comfortable about dodging it, then go ahead and do that. But overall, his second super is much easier to dodge. On top of that, his damage to the shield is pretty high, so that's why, again, I chose magic here. Again, this is not even damage over time person. This just shows you that the amount of damage you can get in with a maxed out 5-star is enough to get through it, even with them getting regeneration based off of you causing stun or power lock. So you don't really have to worry about the global node as long as you're not getting hit, so just really focus on your strategy. So again, with magic here, I didn't want to take chip damage through Hulk attacking my shield and him using his first super, so I chose magic so that way I could basically just stop him from gaining power. So again, with magic, even if he has Masochism up, the second super is going to cause power lock because it applies it twice. So just really use your second super only with magic here, and then just keep him from having any power the entire fight. When he's against the wall, you can do the dash back, dash forward strategy to catch him, or you can attack right afterwards. So as soon as you finish your super, you can immediately attack, and that will either catch him on the shield or actually get you a full combo. And then you also can just do your normal parry strategy. But overall, you just saw there that you don't even need to have damage over time, as long as you're not getting hit and you're causing constant damage, and you're just giving them regeneration based off of a stun, because you can just get enough damage in where it doesn't matter. Alright, so now against Loki, big things for Loki, second super is unblockable, so just make sure that you actually dodge backwards out of it and wait for his scepter to come up after the ice attack. His first super is dodgeable. I recommend dodging twice, so dodge first scepter attack, dodge second time for the actual blast. Watch the video to make sure you get the timing down for it, because you do not want to get hit by that. He does have power gain slightly, so just make sure that you're not pushing the third super. So again, that second one that you just saw there, very easy to dodge. Just dodge backwards, stay away from him, wait for his scepter to come up after the ice attack ends, and then just get out of there. So right now, ice attack, scepter comes up, you just dash back in and attack. Again, I'm using Black Panther, causing enough bleeds on him where the generation doesn't matter. But overall, the Masochism isn't too terrible because you're not really causing it that often, and overall you're going to be able to do enough damage if you have maxed out 4 stars. I'm using a 5-star here, but he's the equivalent level of a maxed out 4-star. So again, big thing with Loki, really try to bait that either second super if you can. Use your first super to try to push him to the second super, or you're going to really just dodge the first super and just kind of make sure you dodge it twice. Overall, not too bad of a strategy. It's really just, again, your normal fighting strategy against Loki. Again, even though I've said this a billion times, this is definitely the most important part on this map, is that if you are really reliant upon stunning after a parry, it's going to be very tricky for you because you're going to be so ingrained with attacking right after a parry, you're going to get hit. So what you just saw right there, because I knew he had Masochism and I parried him, I knew that stun would drop. Which means that you're going to be really careful with yourself to really notice whether or not that stun's going to stick. If the gray countdown timer is there, the stun will stick in terms of a parry. If it's not, your stun will be turning regeneration, and then you're not going to get the actual stun. Which means if you try to attack him immediately afterwards, you're going to get hit by a huge combo, and you're going to take a lot of health damage. So the big thing here is fighting with yourself. You just make sure you're very disciplined, and you're not going to be attacking after a parry if the stun goes away. That's why I also like Black Panther or Bleeders, because then the bleeds are basically going to be allowing the Masochism to trigger, which means your stuns are going to be more likely to trigger because you're more likely to have them in that cooldown timer phase. So overall, not too bad. Now, this is where having the champions that I've chose is a little bit more complicated, because one of the nodes boosting Storm is Caltrops. With Caltrops, that means if you dash backwards, you're going to be caused to bleed. So if you can, you could bring someone that's bleed immune, so that way you don't get damaged over time when you dash backwards. But if you don't, like I did here, it's still doable. But what you're going to have to change is your overall strategy, and on top of that, you're going to lose some champions to this, because you're basically going to have to either dash back sometimes to take damage, or you're going to have to basically just attack them and then receive damage, even though because you're not going to be able to do the same strategy. Overall, though, what you're going to do is you're going to try to push them backwards, and whenever Storm uses her first or second super, you're just going to take it on the shield and then immediately attack afterwards, because you're going to be able to get in right afterwards. So magic didn't last long here, but you'll see it better with Black Panther. The big thing here is if you don't have a bleeder, you cannot dash back as often. Because of that, what you're going to do is you're going to wait for the end of her combos. If you have to dash back when she's using a heavy, do it, because it's better to get the damage in, because you want to basically spread the damage in over time. So don't try to do it with one champion. if she does use her first or second super, that's fine. Don't dash back like you normally would. Take it on your shield and then immediately attack her. You're also going to really want to focus on getting those parries in so that way you don't have to dash backwards. So right here, you saw she used her first super. I didn't dash backwards, and I immediately counterattacked afterwards. So that's the best way to do this. And on top of that, the bleeds are going to remove the Masochism, allowing you to stun her more often. So again, she used her first super, took it on the shield, immediately got back in there to use a combo. So this is how you're going to deal with Caltrops if you don't have a poison or a bleed immune person. You're just going to take her specials on the shield and then immediately attack afterwards. Because her timing for her supers is that you can get in right afterwards even if you blocked it on the shield. So overall, that's the strategy for using bleeders and poisoners and despair route for these global nodes. But in general, even without the bleeders and the poisoners, you can still do this. Just make sure you're being very, very careful with that stun immunity dropping because of the Masochism. Thank you again. Like and subscribe if this video is helpful. Comment below if there's any other walkthroughs that would be specifically helpful for you, and I'll really try to work on getting them out there and really helping out the community if I can. Thank you.